So we're going to take you to all the churches where the bones of each apostle is buried.
Ooh, I like it.
Cool. All right. So we all know where St. Peter is buried. Where is he buried?
Underneath the Vatican.
St. Peter.
Literally
St.
right
Peter's.
underneath the baldacchino and main altar.
Upon this church, upon this rock, I will build my church. And I mean,
Quite literally.
the Vatican is built directly over the bones of St. Peter. So
And
we
it
all know
was-
that.
And it was somewhat coincidental because they found them. They discovered them.
Well, it wasn't
recently.
coincidental. They built the church on that spot. But
Right.
because
But they didn't
knew it was-
know exactly where his bones were.
Right.
But they knew it was on top
Yeah,
of
it was-
that. I mean, and there'd been multiple churches and stuff, but they rediscovered the bones inside the church in the 30s or so. So St. Paul, you've been to this church. We talked about this last night. He's buried in the Basilica of St. Paul
Outside the walls.
All right.
in Rome.
In
And
Rome.
when you go visit that, just a side trip, go to Tre Fontana, where he was decapitated and where his head hit the ground. 3 fountains of water.
So each time his head
emerged from the
bounced,
ground.
water.
Yeah, it's powerful. And when you're walking around there, it's like there's a eerie silence, just like powerful, pervading silence.
Can't believe I missed that when I
Oh,
went to
dude,
Rome.
and a lot of people miss that actually.
So St. Matthew, he is buried in the church, the Cathedral Church of Matthew the Apostle in Salerno, Italy.
Interesting.
Now, St. James the Greater, we've
still
already
need
talked
to do
about him.
Salerno.
We already talked about him. He's buried in the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in Gallica. Is that what it is?
Gaeta, I think isn't Gaeta.
Yeah, it's Spanish, like the northern Spain. Yeah, this could be a little bit different. Okay, so St. James the Less,
Yeah.
the Lesser, and St. Philip, they are buried in the Church of the 12 Holy Apostles in Rome also. A lot of these are in Rome. St. Bartholomew, he is buried in the Basilica of St. Bartholomew on the Island in Rome. St. Andrew, he is buried in the Cathedral of St. Andrew in Amalfi, Italy.
That's a really cool church. Did
That
you get to
is-
visit that?
that's-
No,
this-
I've never been
it's-
to the coast.
Oh, you've never been to that coast?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Huge
dude.
stairs, and it's almost got an Eastern, like Byzantine type influence. Very, very cool. St. Simon the Zealot and St. Jude, they are under the altar of St. Joseph in the left transept of the Basilica of St. Peter in Rome, so at the Vatican. St. Thomas, you were there.
I have Chennai, India.
In Chennai, India, in the Basilica of the
St.
National
Thomas, yeah.
Shrine. Yeah.
Wow.
And there's a cave where he prayed that's really cool to visit, and St. Thomas Mount, which is a beautiful hike that you could pray the Stations of the Cross all the way up and have an overview of Chennai. Just beautiful places devotionally, and there's such strong faith in India throughout, but it's certainly in the region of Chennai.
Yeah,
The Salesians have done a lot of work there in Southeast Chennai.
Yeah, and now I was just thinking, like, for some of the listeners that may not have, prayed near bones, or this is just kind of blowing your mind, but there is a lot of grace. I mean,
yeah,
we've
there
really
been
is.
to. I've prayed at Pope St. John Paul II's tomb, and I'm telling you, man, like there's just so much grace flooded there. And then we went to Conchita Cabrera, who's being canonized here soon
In May.
right?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where it's a devotional. It's not like something that we have to do, but there is a connection to the dead, especially saints.
There really is. I can't tell you how many times that I was in Rome where I was visiting the tomb of JP2 before he was beatified or canonized, and just overwhelmed with the tears of God's mercy. And, I just poured out so much inside, and just received so much.
Yeah.
It's true. It's very,
It's
very
true.
true. There's a lot of grace there.
So go see some bones.
So continuing, St. Matthias, he is the
The add-on.
the add-on. That's so diminutive.
tax
Yeah,
collector?
sorry.
No, I mean, St. Matthias, I think his most important contribution, because not a ton is known about him, but his most important contribution was the idea of apostolic succession. That is clearly defined apostolic succession through his elevation to replace Judas the traitor. And that's a very important thing that our tradition and our church is built on. Now, St. Matthias is built in the Abbey of St. Matthias in Trier, Germany. So he's outside of Italy.
What I love about Mathias is the fact that he was there from the very beginning. He was
one of the 70.
He was one of the 70. So he was there and he experienced a lot. And I just always in these gospel accounts and these stories and I always picture Mathias there being so receptive to Jesus' ministry and really taking up leadership and being a part of the commissioning
What is this 70? Is this like, spring training baseball and you get the 40-man
It's expanded roster?
Expanded roster? I mean, what is that? I've never heard that before.
And the
What
starting team.
So no, the 70 were, when Jesus gave the Great Commission, sending him out 2 by 2, the 70 were, it was his entourage. That was his followers. It wasn't just 12 people
but I've
that
never
followed
heard
him.
that before.
It's in the gospel.
in scripture?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
for sure.
and there's a lot of them. Like,
Yeah,
there's a whole list of them. It's really amazing.
I get it.
You know what I don't know? I can't remember offhand is who Mathias was chosen over.
This is a very special moment in the show. This is the first time that Ryan Schill has ever said anything like that.
That he doesn't know.
That he doesn't know.
And do you know? Because that would be like...
That would be wonderful.
Do you know?
No, I don't know.
Of course not.
Of course not.
So Acts says it was actually Joseph called Barsabbas, who is possibly the same person as Barnabas. So it was, that last roster spot came down to Mathias and Barnabas, and Mathias he won out. And then the last apostle is buried in the ruins of the Basilica of St. John in Ephesus, Turkey. Or is he?
That's the question. Because, really, they don't know where his bones are.
They don't know where his bones are. Now, traditionally, that's where they were buried. And
I love that, though, in relationship to the gospel, where Jesus is like, well, what is that to you, Peter? If I want him to stick around
until I come back,
there's
traditions that St. John actually did not die, and he's still living in a cave in Ephesus.
Yeah.
No, there is.
But if you're listening out there, St. John, dude, I would love to come meet you, man, because
this is absurd right now.
I named my son John. My grandfather was John. Yeah. John is my confirmation name. St. John is mine. That's my boy.
Yeah,
and
I feel the same way.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
That's where they're all buried.